Hey everyone, welcome to Insights with Benny, a space where ideas meet action, where stories inspire reflection, and perspectives challenge the status quo. Whether you're here for clarity, challenge, or quiet wisdom, this is your place. Today's episode is titled The Cold Hearth, When the Fireplace Charms but Never Warms. Not all leaders burn bright. Some merely glow without heat. This reflection explores the silent dangers of disengaged leadership. As always, these are straight from the heart of Insight's blog. Let's begin. Lessons in Leadership, Part 6. You can't lead the mission if your soul never left the boardroom. Not all leaders lead. At Rayabana National Institute, leadership didn't always wear the same shoes. It walked in different strides, sometimes steady, sometimes swift, sometimes in circles. There were the architects, those who drafted futures with quiet conviction. They didn't seek the spotlight, they lit it for others. There were the igniters, those who arrived like thunderstorms, sudden, disruptive, necessary. There were also the keepers, steady hands who protected the flame of the mission. They carried the weight so others could rise. And then came the curators of applause, polished, persuasive, magnetic. Those who could breathe oxygen into a room, but leave it emptier than before. They led with volume, not vision, with presence, not purpose. But perhaps the hardest to notice, the most quietly dangerous, were the drifters. Not destructive, not rebellious, just detached. Moving through motions like clockwork, slowly dulling the energy around them. They weren't against the mission, they just weren't with it. The chilling stillness. Even among the fire and thunderstorms, there is always an ice, a presence so cold, so still, it doesn't scorch or shatter. It simply freezes everything it touches. That was Barbara. She didn't arrive with the clamor of ambition or the sparks of disruption. She seeped in quietly like rust on iron, like a dimming bulb that no one remembers was ever bright. Barbara, or Barbie to those who tried to love her into leadership, was not new to the organization. She had risen through the ranks, once a beloved community worker, now a regional director. Her name appeared on memos. Her signature graced compliance forms. And yet, if you walked through her region, you'd struggle to find her fingerprint on anything that mattered. The organization wasn't just another institution. It was a legacy organization, managing projects that crossed every boundary, from research, education, social protection, systemic reform, to advocacy. It worked at the intersection of rights, dignity, and with vulnerable communities. Leadership here wasn't just a role, it was a calling. But Barbara wore her leadership like a borrowed coat. Neat, necessary, but never hers. Leadership without lift. Imagine this. Sam hires Jack to build a house. Jack shows up each day, on time, with working tools in hands. But each day he forgets the most important thing, the plan. No blueprint, no architectural design. The team works hard, but they're building blind. That was Barbara. She had the team. She had the tools, but not the plan, which is the passion, the purpose, the fire that gives shape to every structure. Leadership is not a parking spot in the organization. It is movement, momentum, a heartbeat pulsing through every policy and project. But Barbara's compass pointed only to payroll deadlines and government bonuses. Her North Star was survival, not mission. And when your only focus is preservation, you miss every constellation that guides the work forward. when the stillness starts to ache. The damage wasn't immediate, it never is. Decay is patient. It creeps in like fog until you can't see the door you came through. At first, things seem fine, but it was the wrong kind of quiet, not peace, but pause, not order, but inertia. Barbara's region moved in circles. The pulse was faint, and no one, not staff, not partners, not even the communities, could quite hear a heartbeat. The drift. She introduced no new projects, no fresh ideas. While other regions launched forward, hers bobbed gently in the shallows, like a forgotten canoe, tied up and waiting for a wind that never came. Staff stopped asking questions, not because they found answers, but because they stopped believing they ever would. Hope began to dry at the edges. The ones that got away. Opportunities don't always knock. Sometimes they whisper. But Barbara's doors stayed half closed, her responses half late, her interest half-hearted. An international agency reached out with interest in her region. She hesitated, stalled, overthought. The same agency later partnered with another regional director, one who moved with urgency. The result? A flagship project that became the pride of that region. Barbara, meanwhile, was still redrafting her approach, where a voice was needed. Advocacy is not neutral ground. When injustice speaks, silence is complicity. Barbara wasn't confrontational, but in advocacy, that's not a virtue, it's a void. When her region faced issues like child trafficking, stakeholders looked to her for leadership. She blinked. The national office had to intervene, handling the media, the crisis, the fallout. Policy windows cracked open in her region from a project initiative. She missed the breeze. Barbara didn't speak up when it mattered. And in rooms where voices changed laws, she whispered. A pulse without reach. Community work is not paperwork. It's presence. It's voices, hard questions, trust. But Barbara's work felt like a photo op. Events happened. Reports were filed. But the smiles were hollow, the impact invisible. There were no stories, just summaries. No resonance, only records. The quiet exodus. And then the most heartbreaking shift. People began to leave. Not with loud complaints, but with quiet resignation. They transferred to other regions, resigned, faded into silence like chairs in a room no longer used. They weren't angry, just tired. Tired of lighting candles where the switch was never flipped. Tired of giving what wasn't being matched. And Barbara, she stayed. Still. Perhaps unaware. Perhaps unwilling. Either way, unchanged. When the fog reached the boardroom, you can ignore a slow drip until the floor begins to warp. That's what happened. Barbara's stillness, long dismissed as just her way, became something riskier. Opportunities slid, partnerships cooled, morale faded, and the whispers that once lived in corridors began showing up in board minutes. The board looked closer, and when they did, they didn't find defiance. They found indifference with a title. So the review began. Quiet, deliberate, clear, and when the truth rose, so did the courage to act. Barbara was offered a dignified exit. She nodded like someone who already knew. The fire we choose. When I later stepped into leadership at the organization, Barbara's story remained a mirror. Not of failure, but of forgetting. Forgetting that leadership is not a presence on paper. It's a flame in motion. We redefined performance. Yes, we kept metrics, but we added something harder to track, yet easier to feel. Presence, passion, purpose. Because without them, a title is nothing but a hollow crown. Polished, perhaps, but unable to carry the weight of what leadership truly demands. Barbara's story was not about what was lost. It was about what must never be forgotten. That showing up is not the same as stepping up. And no matter how beautiful the fireplace is, if there's no fire, it won't warm the room. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them on social and tag me with hashtag Cold Hearth. Please subscribe to my channels. Like, share, and help spread the message. Until next time, stay reflective.